The number one reason most real estate transactions get delayed is because of the mortgage lending process, in my experience. And what often happens is a home buyer, especially one who might be self-employed, they own their own business, their finances are a little bit more complicated compared to someone that works a one job, or a spouse that works one job, two jobs, and their taxes are just pretty straightforward year after year after year. A business owner, it's more like a roller coaster in the finances. And so the underwriters for the lender have to ask more questions. But in my opinion, they wait too late to start asking some of the more invasive questions that they really need answers for in order to approve the loan. And then when it gets so close to the time where the purchase is going to go through, you're about to go through the closing table in about 2 weeks or 10 days or 7 days or even less time, the lender often comes up with another question. The underwriters ask this, and what happened, in 2 years ago on your tax returns? Why did your income change so much? Whatever the questions are, they had the answers. They had the information they needed in order to ask that very good question weeks earlier in the process. And so that causes delays, it causes frustration on the part of the buyer. And then, of course, there are other people in the transaction. There's agents representing both parties. There's this home seller expecting to close on time. And these last minute questions for the buyer that should have been asked earlier in the process really are very frustrating and delay the process. Now, the answer to this, the best answer to this, to avoid this situation, is to listen to your real estate agent who's representing you as a buyer in the transaction. If you have a mortgage lender that you've used in the past and you definitely want to use them, yeah, go ahead. Or if you really are strong-willed and want to use a lender that your real estate agent is not familiar with, you have that right. You can do that. But it's really important to listen to your real estate agent as to why they would recommend 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever given number of lenders that they have experience working with. And normally that's because there's a representative locally that they know personally. And what happens when these transactions start going sideways a little bit or a little bit more complicated, it's hard for me as an agent to call a lender that I only spoke with a couple weeks ago for the first time in my life. They don't know me. They're not as forthcoming with information. It's harder to have a conversation with them about the mortgage loan. And then when things go sideways, we don't really have that relationship. They're guarded. If their process and procedure isn't going well, they're not going to admit that. You don't really have an idea and a sense of where things are going sideways. And when a complicated situation comes up, it's hard to have a frank conversation with somebody that you don't know. But as an agent, if a home buyer is using a lender that I know personally, or at least a representative for that bank or for that lending institution, or that person's a broker, I can pick up the phone, talk to them, say, hey, listen, this is the latest that I've heard. Please let me know what's going on. Is this loan going to go through? Just let me know, and I can get more information, and I can reassure my client. And sometimes the mortgage broker can be an intermediary between us, that is me as the agent, my client, the buyer, and the underwriters in the back room in some unknown, undisclosed location. Sometimes they can smooth over some of the communication glitches that take place, the misunderstandings that take place when an underwriter asks for something. And the mortgage broker that I know can be proactive and is proactive because their livelihood depends on having good relationships with people in the local community, agents like myself in the local community. So they work harder in my experience, early on in the process to make sure everything is set up just right. And if any of these potential questions that could come up because of a complicated financial situation with the buyer, when that does come up, it comes up earlier in the process. and rather than just assuming everything is okay, waiting for the underwriters to start asking questions 10 days before closing is just not the way to do business. So anyway, that's my message about this process. I'm in this situation right now with a client. And I'll post another video about the particulars of their situation because it's very interesting in its own particular case. But this is in general just something to be aware of as a home buyer. You really want to have a great conversation with your real estate agent and take to heart what your agent is saying about mortgage lenders and consider their recommendations of who to contact. Now, if you don't have anybody you know, obviously it would make sense, hands down, to call up 2 or 3 of the mortgage lenders that they recommend. And by the way, your real estate agent should recommend more than one lender. And then they may have somebody that they would more highly recommend, but it really is your responsibility as a home buyer to shop around. And I want you as the buyer to shop around and get the best rates and the best mortgage that you can for your situation. And you'll be talking to the mortgage broker a lot throughout the process. So I want you to call 3 of them and make sure you select somebody that you can really work with well.